Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Lazouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we'll talk about a soup. So a soup is not a dish, is a specific term that we are using in software, which is software of unknown provenance. So mainly we are trying to explain to you this because we had a lot of questions about soup within medical devices. So for that, I have with me Christian Kaestner from Medical Device HQ. So welcome, Christian, to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Christian. And Christian was also with us on LinkedIn Live previously also. So if you want to look at that, go to the YouTube channel. And so today, mainly we want to talk about soup because Christian is really also a specialist on software as medical devices or software legislations. So Christian, before we talk about that, can you just make a small introduction of yourself?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So my name is Christian Kaestner. I live in Sweden, so that's my Swinglish. So I'm a former software developer. I've been in the medical device field for around 25 years now. And as I said, I started as an engineer. I got annoyed about all quality and regulatory people asking about documentation. I thought I need to understand more. So I have developed an interest in quality and regulatory, still having a good, well, one leg or 1 foot in R&D and one nowadays in QA and RA. My interest pushed me to participate in authoring the standards IEC 62304 and IEC 82304-1. So I have some good insights and know hopefully what I'm talking about. So that's me in a nutshell. Today,
Right.
I provide trainings through Medical Device HQ. So that's what I spend most of my time with nowadays.
Great. And yeah, we'll talk about Medical Device HQ at the end of the episode because it's really a good source of information also for you. But first, yeah, let's deep dive a bit on the topic of today. So as we said, the topic of today is soup. So for maybe some medical device companies that are developing software and that, or even devices, hardware devices that are using some software, and they are arriving to maybe the IEC 62304 or the legislation, and they talk about soup. Can we make a small summary of what is soup and why those people should be really understanding this before they can move forward on the regulation for medical devices?
Yeah, so try to make it as simple as possible. Usually when you develop software, you have a development team writing code. That's the part you develop yourself. And then you might end up in a situation where you find, let's say, an open source software or a library provided by a chip vendor or something like that, which you decide to pull into your product. That means, so soup software is a piece of software you, well, as a rule of thumb, haven't developed yourself, but you would like to integrate it and make it part of your medical device software product. So I would say whatever software pieces you put into a software release, which you haven't developed yourself, that's a soup software.
And even the one that you are downloading from any source. So when you go now on the internet, you can download a lot of software and say, oh, this can be great, this can be good. So I suppose, yeah, maybe the term is software of unknown provenance, but here you know where it's coming from sometimes. So is it also included inside all this?
Well, when you know where it's coming from, that's perfectly fine, because you hopefully know where you downloaded it from. So you know the source of it, but unknown provenance should perhaps be more connected to you haven't developed it yourself. So you have no development history, you have no knowledge about how it was developed. So that's the unknown provenance part.
Yeah, and so I was part of some medical devices that are using some software like, those OS operating system or those system that you are using inside, but it's not it's not your software, it's something coming from outside, and then you are creating your software above it, if I can say. So those things are kind of common in those kind of devices, even in medical devices where you are having a software inside. So are those also those OS, like maybe when we talk about Microsoft, which is the Windows, which is the OS for the system, or we are talking about Apple, which is the iOS, exactly, etc. So you have the iOS, and you have above it your application or your work. So is this iOS or this OS also considered as a soup?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I would say it depends.
Okay.
Put it this way, I distinguish between, well, again, let's try to simplify things.
Yeah.
So as a rule of thumb, if you release a software, so all the software components in that release is something you control. And if the operating system is inside the box, then it would become a soup. But if it's outside the box, I would consider that being called, let's say, an operating environment. So some supporting software which the software is operating on top of. So in some cases, if you have, let's say, time-critical product, you typically include operating system because you really need to be in control of how it's configured and how it's running. But in most cases, the operating system, let's say if you have an app, you're not including the mobile phone software or the iOS or Android. You're not including those as soup items. You just say you need a specific version of that. And then you validate your software during your release testing on top of these operating systems. So in those cases where it's outside of the release, I wouldn't consider those a soup. Then I would call them more like operating environment or enabling software or any terms like that.
So when you have then built your software and you are using those scripts or codes that you are getting from other sources, so I suppose in terms of development, it's working. But in terms of documentation, where you have to write some documents about how you have what is exactly the content, the bill of material of your software, all the elements that are inside, etc., you have at a certain point to write, if I can say, some documents per some standards like the IEC 62304. So what is the requirements in terms of soup, for example, for this standard? What developers that maybe have no clue about this or the legislation, what exactly they should consider when they are including this small code on it? Is it more difficult for them to then validate their software, or is it easier because I don't know? So is this something that can make their life more difficult?
Short answer is yes, it can be more difficult. And this is because you don't know where this piece of software is coming from. So depending on the legacy of that software or how many others are using it, combined with the criticality of the software you're using, that could drive you to a position where you need to spend quite a lot of time and effort to prove that piece of software is working as you want it to. And at some point, you can perhaps ask yourself, do we gain something compared to developing this software ourselves? I think that's perhaps the most important question. You should ask yourself, what benefits do we gain by using this piece of software already written compared to writing it ourselves? And it's not always easy to answer that. And I think here I would like to stress the difference between OTS, off-the-shelf software used in FDA guidances, because they are more strict. They even require in the guidance documents that you should justify what's the benefit of using an open source software or soup component compared to writing it yourself. And that's not that specific in IEC 62304, but it's kind of underlying there anyway, because you need to define requirements, you need to do risk assessment, you need to integrate it into your software. So all this work is still there, even though someone else has written the code.
So when you say all this is there, you have, so when you are creating your own code, you have to do this phase, if I can say, the validation of and verification of your product. So are you obliged also to do a verification validation for this soup? Means that you are putting that inside as also on the test and say you have to test this and verify if it's working like you are expecting, etc. So you are exactly doing the same as what you are doing with your software, I suppose.
The only thing you basically don't need to do or can do is looking into detailed design, because you don't have the detailed design. But otherwise, if we leave class A software aside, B and C, you should write or shall write requirements for your soup software. So what functional and performance requirements do you expect from this soup? That's something you should define. And when you define those requirements, you're also committed to verify them. So you have to do the requirement verification stuff anyway. And also additional requirements that what requirements does the soup software has on you? Because some soup software perhaps needs specific hardware to operate properly, or they might need to have other software dependencies. So the requirement goes both ways. So the soup software could put a requirement on your product, and your product should define a requirement on the soup.
So I had a case where we have identified a program that was good, if I can say, and that we can use. And on the website of this company that was creating that, I think it was Microsoft, if I remember, but I can't remember now.
Okay.
It was saying this is IEC 62304 certified. So this is good, etc. So for us, it was like, oh, great, it's IEC 62304 certified. So then the software is good, if I can say. So does it mean that, or it means nothing at all?
I was close to say it means nothing at all. But that sounds perhaps a little bit too rude. but IEC 62304 starts with, let's say, system requirements. So what are the system requirements specific to your product? So if you have a generic piece of software developed following a process, that's fine. But the input, which is then mainly requirements and also hazard situations related to your product, it's not part of the soup development, right? So they follow the process, but the key inputs, and obviously even perhaps the most important, is then hazard situation. If we just leave the requirements aside for a moment, and it's IEC 62304 is a safety standard. And if you don't know the risk aspects when you develop the software, how does it make sense to claim it's IEC 62304 compliant? Because they don't know in what context their piece of software will be used.
Exactly.
You follow my layout. So that's why I'm saying, well, it doesn't help. It's nice, but it doesn't really help all the way, right?
Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com. Exactly, and I had the comparison to I have some companies that are also saying that to me. They are having a product. I mean, they are targeting maybe to have a product which is where the company is ISO 13485, and they say to me, oh, I will buy these products and I'll put my name on it, like OBL, OEM activity, and then I will sell it. Yeah. But don't worry, the company is ISO 13485. I say, yeah, the company is ISO 13485, but are you ISO 13485? It's mainly also the thing that you are the one that places the device on the market. You are the one that markets it. You are the one that claims that it's good, etc. So you should be the one that is also ISO 13485. You should not look at the others because they are maybe manufacturing it in a certain way. You are selling that in another way, so you have also to be like that. So I suppose the same for software. This company is claiming IEC 62304 for their system, also their requirements, their things. But as soon as it comes to us, we have different requirements or different way to use it. So then we have to test it per our requirements and do that. But it was my conclusion also when we have reviewed that. Yeah.
But just a comment on a, well, let's say a software supplier claiming that compliance 62304. Hopefully they know and understand the language. So you could approach them and say, could you please share your risk management file? So, and if they can that, then you can hook into that. It will of course make your start working with that piece of software easier, because you can see and verify what I've already done. And perhaps you can even leverage what I have done if they provide this documentation. But if they don't provide any documentation, I don't see any benefit of them claiming that they are 62304 compliant.
So I think it's a good point here. So mainly, if I see that this company is IEC 62304, maybe it can be an advantage to contact the developers or the people because they have apparently the documentation, so this can help you. I'm not sure if they will give that to you. This is maybe the other thing, but if you can get that, it's really an advantage for you. I suppose you have a lot of things that you can avoid to do then if you can get that.
If you can get the package, absolutely, because then you can leverage that package, hopefully. If they don't deliver the documentation, then at least I think they could share what hazard situation have they considered in their software risk management. Then they perhaps don't need to reveal how they have implemented risk control measures. I would love to see that, of course. But if they can share that piece of information at some level, then you have a starting point to work on your side. So it should be beneficial, but if you don't get any pieces of documentation information out of them, I think it doesn't add any value to have the stamp on the webpage saying we are 62304 compliant.
I imagine also that those companies can sell this kind of package also because this is also, as I've said, some work that they have done. So instead of just saying, yeah, I give that to you, they can maybe sell that directly. Have you seen this kind of thing?
I think when working with embedded software, you have a real-time operating system, which has been developed to be for safety critical applications. And they do have let's say a validation package, which they ship together with the software. And again, it comes with a price tag, but
exactly.
On the other hand, you don't have to do the work. So it's you can leverage on it. Absolutely, you can do that. But if you don't get any piece of evidence of 62304 work, then it doesn't help really, in my opinion.
Yeah, one other thing is that as you are using a software of unknown provenance and you have done all this testing and verification, validation, etc., is there requirements per maybe IEC 62304 or any standards to have a view of any changes or updates that are happening there that maybe you need to implement with your software? So is there some rules to say, yeah, if you are using a SOUP, you have to maintain some kind of review, update, check that there is a change, and then you have to make this update also with your software?
Yeah, at least in 62304, you have the maintenance plan or maintenance section. And the maintenance section also, let's say, asks you to have some kind of regular, the pace is not defined, but at least monitoring changes, because there could be anomalies, it's called bugs, in the SOUP software, which could hit you. And I think this becomes even more important when you look at cybersecurity. So if you have a SOUP software which is kind of exposed to, let's say, cybersecurity challenges, then it becomes even more critical to monitor it, because sometimes you might just be happy with, you're never happy with the bug, but you could accept it exists. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it can quickly become more critical because, well, evil persons can exploit and use your software to do bad things or even hijack the software. And that's let's say, it's not new, but it's a change compared to when the standard was developed, I would say. So the maintenance section IEC 62304 definitely requires you to have some kind of monitoring function to identify things that you need to consider.
So is there so when we are doing this certification for medical device or CE marking, I suppose the auditors will also check those standard, the IEC 62304, etc. Do you think, I mean, what if you had this experience before? So if an auditor is checking this part, so do you think they will find out that maybe the software, the SOUP that they are using is already at version 3, and while the one they have is version 1? So is this something that can create some problems, and they really have to see that you are monitoring and doing those activities, or no, they will not check that at all?
I hope they will check, and I've also seen some auditors doing that.
Okay.
So it might happen, but the piece of advice, I don't think you need to upgrade each time there's a new release of a SOUP.
Yeah.
But what you need to have, need to have a documented statement and say, we have reviewed the changes or the updates, and we don't find a reason to upgrade right now. Because sometimes there's just a functionality growth, and there might be bugs as well, but you can probably assess the bugs and see, well, those will not have an impact on our product. And then you can just leave it as is. So you don't need to feel pressure to always upgrade each time there's an upgrade. Just make a thorough assessment of the changes and see if they could add value to you, or if they could, or if there are bugs which might contribute to problems in your existing software. So it's a really do a thorough assessment, document it, and stay with that conclusion. Then it's fine if in order to say that there's a new version. Yes, we know, but we have have made the conclusions that we stay with existing revision as is.
No, which is exactly that. I mean, having a proof that you have done the action and then you have decided to not take things that, and you know the risk or whatever, and you have assessed that is great. I suppose if the change is due to cybersecurity thing, maybe here it's more tricky to say, no, I will not take it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, yes, because if there's a new cybersecurity threat or possibility to exploit your software, then you should do the upgrade.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other, if I can say, advice that that we haven't talked today about on SOUP that maybe those manufacturers or software developers have to understand or have to follow? Or maybe you have seen some mistakes that people were doing and that are maybe good to warn here?
I think in general, there's a confusion about firmware and software.
Okay.
And I think that sometimes firmware is used as an escape route for some products. And to me, firmware is just another name. It could also be called embedded software.
Okay.
And you could basically say that's the counterpart of SAM, the software as medical device. So firmware and embedded software are integrated or developed with the purpose of being included in the software, in a dedicated hardware. And sometimes I've seen people trying to purchase it, outsource the development of a piece of hardware, including software, and then they just fly under the radar and say this is perhaps soup software or something, or that pretend the software doesn't exist at all. And that's a bad move. Because first of all, if you outsource development of a piece of medical device, including software, then 62304 definitely applies to that software. If you would like to purchase off-the-shelf non-medical device hardware, including software, well, then it's a different story, because it's developed for generic purpose, but it comes with a piece of software. It's still not a soup, and it might be hard and difficult to enforce 62304 compliance, but then I would suggest to go down the route with regular purchasing control and validating the software in that hardware. But it's still not soup. But I've seen people trying to go down that route and call it soup in that case.
No, I think it's a good advice. And as we said, yeah, there are a lot of interpretation or way that people are trying to escape or to find a way to make it compliant when it's not. But I suppose also that the auditors are now well trained and understand this kind of thing and will be warning them. So it's not something that they can just trick the auditors on that. They understand this kind of thing. So be careful of maybe having some issues about that. We talked about 62304. You talked also about 82304-1. So what is the difference here?
82304 is intended to be a product standard for standalone software. So if you develop, it's intended to be the counterpart if you're aware about IEC 60601-1, which is product safety standard for hardware, basically, including software. And 82304-1 is the counterpart on the product standard level. So it defines high-level requirements about how to develop a standalone software, SAM, and then it points for the development part. It points to 62304. So you can say 82304 is on top, and then below that it references 62304 for the development part.
Okay, no, that's great. Okay, so thank you for all those information. I hope now Soup has no secret to our audience today, but yeah, if there is still some question, don't hesitate to ask on the comments. Mainly, Christian, can you tell us more about Medical Device HQ and how maybe people, how you can help people, why they should maybe contact you?
I'm happy to do. So Medical Device HQ is an online platform for trainings. So you find a lot of different online trainings at the Medical Device HQ website. And you also find a lot of free resources on our YouTube channel. So you can go to YouTube, search for Medical Device HQ, and you find a lot of free content there. And where you find me on the platform, I have 2 courses on software. So one mainly only focusing on IC 62304, and one which is a bit broader and is a SAM software development online course. So whenever it comes to medical device trainings, we have a lot of resources to provide to you.
Yeah, I saw that, and really a lot, not only on software, there was, I saw some on usability or some other elements. So yeah, just go and check what is maybe needed for you. Even my team is getting some training from Medical Device HQ, so it's really great. So thanks for that. Okay, so people can, I suppose, contact you also directly on LinkedIn, on your website.
Yes.
I will put everything on the show notes. And lastly, we discussed also about this topic of soup. So you have also some blog post also on your website, and specifically maybe a blog post also on the soup. So I will put that also on the show notes. But I suppose, yeah, for people, Medical Device HQ is also a good source of information if you need to understand everything about medical devices. Okay, great. So thank you, Christian. Thanks for your help, and I hope, yeah, really people have a great understanding of the soup now. And if they have any question, don't hesitate. Go to the show notes, go to the comments also, and you'll see all the details on how to contact us or how to contact Christian. So Christian, thank you, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.